Welcome to the second presentation in the series of 3 presentations in which we are focusing on the subject chairing effective church board meetings. Again, I want to restate how important these recordings are, because as we have stated in the first presentation, there are 3 components to having effective church board meetings. Now, you will hear me repeatedly use the word effective church board meetings, because it is one thing to have a meeting that's not effective. It's also another thing to have a meeting that is effective and brings and enhances the life of the church. So in these presentations, 3 of them, the first presentation we had was and focused on preparing for meetings. What do you do to prepare for effective meetings? In that presentation, we concluded that thorough preparations of a meeting accomplishes almost 50% of the results of a meeting. The second presentation, which is this current presentation I am making, will focus on the actual chairing of the meeting. We will look at different things that are involved in chairing a meeting. A third presentation will focus on communicating the decisions that have come from an effectively conducted church board meeting. And so I invite you to this presentation of chairing effective meetings. Our focus, again, much as all the principles that I will share, can be applied basically in chairing all kinds of meetings, be it committee meetings at a conference level, union level, or any committee meeting, or be it in chairing of boards. Again, these principles would be applicable at all times in various settings. But again, to qualify so that we get focused, our presentation is going to use and primarily focus on church boards. The obvious book that we need to follow as we talk about chairing of church boards is the local church manual. The local church manual. I have added to it the best practices in chairing effective meetings. Best practices come from experience that I have had in chairing meetings or in observing chaired meetings, or actually by being a member who belongs to the board that actually looks into governance and chairing of meetings in the country of Zambia. Now, as we start, I would like us now to focus at how do you start a meeting. So people have come, the room is ready, the seats are all ready for you to invite them in, and it's time for the meeting. If the meeting is starting at 09 hours, people now have walked in, they are seated, and the meeting is about to start. How do you start a meeting? What is involved in starting a meeting? The first thing is start the meeting on time. Start the meeting on time. I have chaired many meetings. I have observed many meetings chaired. I will share with you what I have seen. The chairperson of a board is actually key to the discipline of the board members. If the chairperson sends unintended or intended messages, indirectly or directly, they are communicating to the members the culture of how they conduct meetings. I'll give you an example. When I began chairing meetings, I noticed the meetings were announced that they were starting at 9 a.m. Most church boards start at about 9 a.m., at least those that I have worked with. I noticed that even though the time announced was 9 a.m., people would start coming in at the meeting at 9:30. The chairperson himself will not be at the meeting at 9, but will wait until it is 9:30, then he too will walk in, and then at 9:45, they will start inviting people into the meeting, and about 10, then they will start the meeting. Because people knew that that is the pattern of behavior, they completely disregarded the instructions on the notice or the instructions given during the announcement that the meetings are starting at 9 a.m. And the reason is the chairperson, by his or her actions, had communicated to the people that if you come at 8 in the morning, there will be nobody. If you come at 8:15, that's when people start coming in. 8:30, the meetings haven't started. So if you really have other things you want to do them until about until 9:45, then you come in. Because the truth is, even though we announced 9, the meeting starts at 10. That is communicated by the chairpersons. In my experience in chairing meetings, and the best practices in chairing meetings, is that when it is 8:59, and those that have attended meetings that I personally have chaired or effective meetings will see the chairperson take a seat a minute before the meeting or even minutes before the meeting if they are testing the equipment to make sure everything is working. But at about 8:59, using the meeting that is starting at 9, the chairperson will sit. And immediately it hits the second minute of 9 a.m., the chairperson will say, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to take your seats as we start the meeting." When I started doing this in my district, I caused problems because I had told the people ahead of time, "Ladies and gentlemen, the meetings will start at 9 a.m. They didn't take it serious. They actually thought it was business as usual. When 9 a.m. came, I started the meeting. There was nobody. I was the only one there with the church clerk, and because there was nobody and there was no quorum that was constituted to start the meeting, I declared the meeting over and closed it. Then we literally left a poster on the door indicating the meeting is over. And when the people came, they said, but how come the meeting is over? But I wasn't here. They learned the lesson. The next time I called a meeting, they were in the meeting on time. And thereafter, they were in the meeting on time. And if they were not on time, they will send written or verbal apologies. I noticed that the same culture is applicable in all meetings. In the conferences, the unions, the division, the general conference, anywhere. If you want to train people in effective meetings, start the meeting on time. I beg you. There is something about starting the meeting on time and effectiveness. People will know you keep your promises, you mean your words, and you will stick to it. Now, in order not to be so rigid or almost be called fanatical about it, what I usually do is when it is time, I will say words such as, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to take your seats as we start the meeting. Then in order to allow a few minutes, I'll start indicating to them, or just general remarks. I know some of you may not have brought everything you want in the house as you take your seats, but this would be the best time for you to grab anything and take your seats. I will soon be asking the person responsible to offer the opening prayer to do so. And I might call on any one of you, so please find your way to the seat. That way, I have begun the meeting on time. Secondly, I have explained the importance of starting the meeting on time. I usually say this, and at one point, I became so serious that I postponed meetings 3 times. I postponed meetings 3 times, actual board meetings, because the people were not coming on time. Finally, I said to them, ladies and gentlemen, do you know what it means when 20 of us as board members are supposed to start the meetings on time, and for some reason you don't show up? What it actually means is, if you are 10 minutes late in starting the meeting, you have wasted 10 minutes times 20 people who are there, which is a good number of hours. And it's not good to do that. God is a God of order. When the fullness of time had come, God sent his Son. Start the meetings on time. I think this is clear enough, I hope. Number 3, call the meeting to order. Calling the meeting to order is simply saying, we are starting the meeting, I'm calling the meeting to order. And those who are recording minutes will record the meeting was called to order at 09 a.m. Then determine if you have a quorum to start the meeting. It doesn't even serve the purpose. If your meeting has a defined quorum in order to conduct business, if you start the meeting before you have formed a quorum, somebody can question the legality of that meeting, because by stipulation you have not met a quorum. The general statement from our church manual is that at a local church there is no defined quorum, which means you as a local church board can determine and say, we will start our meetings when we have at least 2/3 of the members present. But it's important for you to define at least some number of people who need to be present before you start a meeting or constitute what would be acceptable as an acceptable number with which to start a meeting. It's important that you determine that you have a quorum. And how do you do that? You can either just ask the clerk, or you yourself as chairperson simply say, as I look around here, I see 10 people this side, I see 7 people this side, and out of our total membership of this board of 24, I think we have about 18 people. That constitutes 2/3 of the membership. We will call the meeting to order and start. At that same time, it is important for you to ask for records purpose and say, are there people who are not here but sent apologies? Usually, the clerk who serves as the secretary would know whether anybody called in, or you as chair may know. And at that time, you would simply mention and say, I got a call from such and such a person. They said that they are not feeling well, so they sent their apologies. Or this person says they will join us after 15 minutes, and you do that. It's important to do that, including important to record apologies. Why do you need to record apologies? You record apologies because you need to know, are there members who actually don't attend? Because it's important for you, and I will mention this. One of the tasks of the church clerk is to keep accurate records of the minutes of the meeting, which we will talk about in our next presentation. And one of the things in the minutes is the number of people, name by name, who have attended the meeting. And so it's important we record those who are present, and then we record those who have sent apologies. Once you have done that, which will take maybe some few minutes, maybe up to 5 minutes, you can then invite the people and say, I hope all of you received your agendas and you have brought them, and in the event you did not, I would like you now to take your agendas as we turn to our agenda for the day. Now, friends, if you have followed what I have discussed so far, you have hopefully gotten a very strong impression of the importance of starting your meeting on time, of the things that you need to do in order for you to have a good start that will create a great meeting as you move on. Let me now come to the sample of an agenda. The chair has invited people to look at their agendas, and they have picked out the agendas, and they are looking at the agenda. And let me now share a sample of the agenda. What I have shared as a sample is actually just the actual agenda, because the rest of the agenda will really be determined by what you are actually dealing with. But these things that I have listed on the screen, in most cases, if not all the time, need to be part of the agenda, the opening agenda items of a local church board. Number 1, opening prayer. Opening prayer is important. Immediately people have taken their seats, you say, I've just called the meeting to order, and I am asking Elder Brown to offer the opening prayer. in the minds of all people, once prayer has been offered, business has commenced. Because you have invited God in your presence. You now know that God is present with us in a special way to help us transact the business. And when you open with prayer, the person will pray for the success of the meeting. A person will pray asking God to guide the chair and asking the board to make the best decisions that are aligned along the will of God. So the first thing you do on every agenda is to have an opening prayer. Chairperson's remarks. Usually after opening prayer, that's when you as chairperson would make your comments. And comments would involve whatever is on your heart. But you would welcome members. Hey, thank you so much, Sister Esther. I heard actually that you were not feeling well. I'm so glad that you have made it. I know many of you are busy people, and so welcome. I would like to announce to you that the duration of this meeting is 2 hours. We are starting at 09 a.m. We intend to end before or by 11 a.m. this morning. Unless obviously you, the members here, would like us to just drag on, but from where I am as chairperson, my goal is to get this meeting over by 11. And if we cannot be over at 11, I will have to ask for your permission if you want to extend the meeting, and by how long. But I think looking at the agenda and looking at the preparedness of you, because many of you received the materials already, you have read your materials, and you are acquainted with this, and with the able presentations of our head of departments, we should be able to finish this agenda on time. Actually, personally, I would not be surprised if we finished by 10:30. Chairperson's remarks sets the tone of the meeting. It creates the expectations from the meeting. It also enables people to have an idea of how long they will be in the meeting. It's important for you not to make people go away with the impression that you are telling them not to speak. And so you could add on to say, you know what? In the multitude of counsel, there is wisdom. So each one of you, when an item is presented, will speak as will be appropriate. In most church board meetings, people start with a devotion. And that devotion is something no more than 5 to 10 minutes. And even when I say 5 to 10 minutes, I really mean 5 to 10 minutes. Devotion is simply intended to set the tone of the meeting. And usually the person assigned to give the devotion, if it's not the chairperson, him or herself, will simply say, ladies and gentlemen, for our devotional thought, I would like us to look at Matthew chapter 17, verse 14. They will read the text and briefly comment on it. And then at that time, invite people to say, is there any prayer request you would like us to make as we close our devotion? And after the devotion has been conducted, then you will adopt the agenda. Adopting the agenda is extremely important, particularly for one or two reasons. First of all, what's adopting the agenda? The agenda has been proposed to you when it was sent to you when the notice came as a board member. You have read through it. But it is possible that there could be an item that was either agreed upon to be discussed at the next church board meeting, but it's missing. Or there could be an agenda added there that someone is not ready to present. I have seen agenda items that will say the church budget, approval of church budget, this and this. And when you come to the meeting, the people or the finance committee that is responsible for developing the budget may not be ready. Adopting the agenda is simply giving the members an opportunity to say, are these the items you want us to discuss at our meeting today? So members can do two things. They can say, Chair, we are not ready for agenda item 7, approval of the budget, because the finance committee is still working on that. By the way, as a side one, the church board can have committees of the church board. That is, committees that can be tasked to do specialized work, like preparing a budget. The finance committee of the board can actually prepare the budget and bring it to the church board for consideration and approval. So there are two things that are done during adoption. Number one, additional agendas may be put on, or some agendas may be removed, or the agenda may be adopted as presented. Let me make a comment about removing agenda items. You can remove an agenda item from the agenda if you are not ready to present it. If the investigations are not yet ready, you can just say, Chair, that item, I don't think we are ready. Adding agenda items needs to be considered with care. For example, if you are going to be chairing a meeting as chairperson, you do not want an agenda that you don't know or you are not familiar with. So a person cannot just say, Chairman, can we add to the agenda? The agenda item is Pardon Mwansa. Now, what about Pardon Mwansa? You cannot take an agenda as chairperson, an agenda you are not familiar with or you are not aware of. Because what if that agenda has hidden things? What if the person who puts the agenda Pardon Mwansa wants to come and say things about Pardon Mwansa that you don't know, or that can be embarrassing, or that can be out of place? So as chairperson, you need to be very careful in accepting additional agendas. You can accept additional agenda items such as, a person may say, Chair, I think it would be good if we can determine a date for our next church board meeting for planning purposes. That's a straightforward agenda additional item. It's date for the next meeting. You can also accept an agenda item that says, Chair, in the last meeting, we had taken out the agenda on presenting a budget because it was not ready. But Chair, the Finance Committee says they are ready to present a budget. That is something that everybody is familiar with, or you as Chair are familiar with. But it is not the best practice to accept an agenda and add it, adopt it to be part of the agenda if you don't know what it is. Because once you adopt the agenda, you have committed yourself to managing that agenda, including the item you have just added on. As you now adopt the agenda, part of the agenda you will adopt will be previous minutes. Almost all church boards have only one meeting which has no previous minutes. That's the first church board ever. But all church boards that follow thereafter are going to have previous minutes. Let me say this. It is important, very important, that you review the minutes of the previous meeting. There are two major reasons why we review minutes of the previous board. Number one, you want to verify the accuracy of the decisions made. Accuracy would be both in the wording. Has the action, the resolution, has it been captured in the best words that describe what resolution was made? That's very significant, because if an action was couched in words that are not clear, that action will be unclear on what it is it's calling forth. So we review minutes for accuracy. We also review minutes for implementation purpose. You have met at a meeting and you have taken a decision to say, voted to invite the choir from the Cape Conference Church to come and perform on such and such a Sabbath at the local church expense. That action is taken. When you meet in this meeting and that action is read in the minutes, you want to now ask, Chair, can we know if this correspondence has reached the invited group? There are times, and unfortunately many times, when actions have been taken and no action has been done. This is why in the third presentation in this series, we will look at communicating decisions of the board. So it's important for you in reviewing minutes to say, Chair, has this action been implemented? Yes, 100%. Has this one? No, we are at 50%. What's the challenge? This is the challenge. Okay, number 3, you review for accuracy and for implementation. That is an effective church board. A church board where previous minutes are not read is like a church board that does not know where it has come from. It does not know where it is going. It just knows we are here to make decisions. Previous minutes must be an agenda item because it is important for these 2 reasons we have given. There are other things that appear on agenda items that must be there that I have left out because maybe at the local church board they may not be necessary, but I will mention them. For example, it's important to mention if any of the members has conflict of interest. Conflict of interest can actually be in a church board. I'll give you an example. If I am chairing a meeting, and that meeting of a local church board is considering the employment of a secretary for the local church on a payroll. In other words, the church board is trying to employ a local secretary who will be employed and paid by the church. Now, if one of the names to be considered is my wife, Mrs. Mwansa, or my daughter, Miss Chulu Mwansa, if any of my relatives or close people are going to be considered in that, I may have or should declare interest by indicating and simply saying, Chair, I need to declare interest. And even if I'm the chairperson, I'll say, members, I need to declare interest. On this item, I cannot chair because my wife's name is being considered. What it simply means is I'm saying I'm human. I love my wife. I will support my wife to get the job in preference of another person. And because I don't want to be put in such a situation, neither do I want you as members to think the reason my wife has been chosen is because I chaired the meeting. I'll declare interest. It's also possible actually to declare interest if, for example, the church has decided that it wants to print brochures to advertise an evangelistic campaign in large numbers. And the large numbers simply mean they will spend significant amounts of money. If any of the board members or the chair, the church clerk, if any of them owns a printing press, and their printing press will be considered to be offered that business, they need to declare interest and say, Chair, I would like to declare interest that on that item my company is being considered, so I will not either take a vote or participate in the discussion on that item. When you declare interest, it's up to the board now to determine that the nature of the decision is such that you actually should either not chair or you should not vote. Now, voting you can, because it's your right to vote. But to participate in discussion, particularly for campaigning for yourself, would not be allowed. Yes, voting is a right. Whether your wife is involved in, you are allowed to vote because you are entitled to expressing your vote. It is your right. Okay, having covered all these things we've covered, before we go to the next set of presentations within the scope of chairing meetings, I would like to pause so that those of you using these presentations for purposes of learning, because actually this is learning, this is more than just a presentation taken and go. I would like to pause and ask you to either in groups of twos, in groups of threes, or in groups that you want to get organized and respond to questions that have been prepared to help you internalize the materials we have covered. I hope and trust you will look at the different things, including the effectiveness of starting meetings in the prescribed manner we've done. You will come up with things that you will recommend when you come back from your group exercise. So at this time, I would like you to take your time to do that. Okay, we will continue with the presentation. The next set of presentations in chairing meetings looks at the members' responsibilities under two headings: knowledge and rights. Knowledge and rights. First of all, you were elected to be a member of the church board because of the position you hold in the church from the nominating committee. And so you are a legitimate member. But the fact that you are a legitimate member does not mean you actually are ready to be a member of the board. The following are some of the things you need to seriously pay attention to in order for you to be an effective church board member. Number one, you need to have a knowledge in the operations of a local church. And the best way to do that is to read the church manual. The church manual outlines, first of all, the governance of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The church as a whole, meaning starting from a local company, church, organized church, district, local conference, local unions, local division, the general conference. The church manual explains all these levels of the church and how they relate to each other and how decisions are made, so that the decisions made at the local church board are aligned with the thinking of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The church manual also describes different things and how they are conducted, including how do you conduct a wedding, how do you have Holy Communion, how do you apply, what do you do as a church board, what decisions do you make in the church board, what are the processes for disciplining. These are all outlined in the church manual, including the church manual articulates the fundamental beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, so that you as a member of the board could not only have a knowledge of yourself or about yourself as a believer, but you will have a knowledge of how the Seventh-day Adventist Church operates. This is important, and that's why I have put it here as a necessary part of knowledge. Familiarize yourself with disciplinary guidelines. The reason why I singled that out is because the most stickiest, challenging tasks of a church board is on church disciplinary matters. Familiarize yourself with what is written in the church manual under the chapter discipline. And the reason you want to familiarize yourself is because you want to be a responsible board member. One who will even quote to the chairperson and say, "Chair, according to the church manual, we are not ready for this item." And the chairperson will say, "What do you mean we are not ready?" Then you will say, "According to what the church manual says on such and such a page, this item is not ready." I've also singled out there, understand the Bible, including Matthew chapter 18, which outlines something we will still cover. So what have I said so far? What I have said in members' responsibilities is that you have a responsibility as a member to make sure that you understand not only the Bible and its teachings, but you understand the governance of the Seventh-day Adventist Church at all levels and the relationships that exist between you as a church board and church board member and the rest of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You are not an island as a church board. You have no right to make any decision outside of the dictates of the local church manual. Wow, that's a strong statement, but it's true. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is not owned by you as a member or as a local church board. It's not owned by you. So you cannot, out of your own impression, decide to make decisions outside of the processes, the understanding, and the culture and traditions that are articulated in the church manual. And obviously, I singled out the church manual. There are other manuals. There are elders' manuals. There are pastors' manual. There is this manual. Everybody comes up with a manual. But the one document that governs you is the local church manual. As a side, as a detour to my presentation, may I share with you why the local church manual, or the church manual, I keep on calling it local, it's the church manual. The reason why the church manual is the document that governs the life operations of the local church is because the church manual goes through the most rigorous process in its construction, content, and composition. The church manual is approved with editorial changes or additional material or removal of material only at the general conference session in sitting, once in 5 years. And once the general conference in sitting after 5 years brings the church manual, by the way, the church manual is always an agenda at a general conference session meeting, because it is always going to be revised. Once the general conference in session sits down and revises the church manual, and a vote is taken, and the church at the general conference, represented by all global family members from the east to the west and south to the north, from Australia to Canada, South America to Russia, the Europe and the Africa, the Asia and the Caribbean. Once all the members together have approved the local church manual, you are looking at a document that is not yours. You are not looking at a document you can say, I don't care what the church manual says. You are not looking at such a document. You are looking at a document that binds you to what you decide. And if you have issues with the local church manual, then you raise those issues and they will be considered at the next general conference session when the church manual is reviewed. I thought that was a necessary promo for you to understand that even as a local church board, you have rights, but you have limited rights. Your rights are limited to governing and making decisions for your church in line, in harmony with the local church manual. What are your rights as a board member? What are your rights? Because you have rights. I already spoke of one right in my previous comments. The right to vote. The right to vote is yours. Nobody can say to you, no, the item we are dealing on, you can't vote. No, you have the right to vote. Obviously, you can decide to say, I abstain. I usually don't encourage people to abstain from voting, because all decisions are made with the understanding that this is your best understanding of what the Holy Spirit would like you to do. So it's good to express what your impressions are, whether you agree or you don't agree to the item. That voting is your right. Not only is voting your right, you have the right to speak and speak freely. Just don't abuse it. I know of people who want to speak all the time. Their hands are always up. The point is, it's your right to speak, just don't abuse it. While on that, there are also members who don't speak. My encouragement is, you are depriving the rest of the board members with your knowledge, wisdom, and talent if you don't speak. So please speak. It is your right. During your time to speak freely, the chair may, depending on circumstances, put a limit on time and frequency. When the chair said this meeting is going to last from 09 a.m. to 11, you have 2 hours to manage an item. There are some members who, when a plan, an evangelistic plan is presented, they want to start evangelism right there and then. And start saying, Chair, at this meeting that we have planned, that will take place in Pretoria, in Lusaka, we intend to preach 14 sermons, and obviously, Chairperson, one of the sermons has to do with righteousness by faith. That's not the time for those comments. They are good comments, but they are just not appropriate for that time. You are voting plans. You are not invited to start preaching. Besides, the church board is the choir. They are with you on the same page, hopefully. Frequency has to do with, there are some members that just want to dominate. It's okay for members to speak more than once, but it's not right for the chair to acknowledge Brother Brown, and then Sister Esther has raised up the hand. Instead of the chairperson, after Brother Brown has spoken, giving Sister Esther a chance to speak, he again goes back to Brother Brown. And after Brother James has spoken and other hands are up, he still goes to Brother Brown. Even if Brother Brown is an expert on the particular item, it is not right to make the meeting only hear from Brother Brown, unless Brother Brown is the one presenting that material and people are asking questions to which Brother Brown must respond. That is important because members can pick that the chairperson is selective. I have personally sat in meetings where I felt sad when I realized the chairman deliberately decided to sideline some people who wanted to speak by not recognizing their hands. You know, when you are in a large meeting, even 20 is a large number and 6 hands are up, and you keep on choosing the same numbers, and you are not pointing at some member. It is the right of a member, if you want to close a matter and they have not spoken, to say, Chair, I ask and I beg that I speak. I've had my hand up. For some reason, my hand has not been recognized, and I see that you are about to close this matter. Chair, may I speak? It's the right of a member to do that. Limiting time is, you can say, you know, leaders, there's a lot we can talk about this item. If you are in favor of it, you can just either keep quiet or say, I am in support, or come and express your support through a vote. But if you are going to speak, could you please limit your speech to 3 minutes so that we would end the meeting by 11. Important points. The right to be honest. Honesty. Depending on the issue you are dealing with in a church board, it is important that only what is true is what is spoken. Honesty. The Bible prohibits giving false testimony. It's important that members know they have the right, and to be honest is a must. It is okay for a member to present a differing view. To differ in the views on a matter is a member's right. It may not be comfortable to the person they differ with, but it is the right of a member to differ with other opinions if they do not see it so. Resulting in the same member must also know other people have the right to their views, therefore they should have their views respected. Respect other people's views. In the same manner, you expect them to respect your views. After a lot has been talked about and discussed and considered, should it be that the views are still strong on both sides, the vote will come and determine what the majority think is the right thing about that particular item. The majority, through a vote, will come and express it. Very important. We now go to presenting an agenda item. These are more of mechanics that the chair and the secretary need to be aware of. Number one, the chair and the secretary have roles they play in presenting an agenda item. Since you have an agenda, and it's the chairperson who calls for a vote on an item. Once an item has been voted, you then go to the next item. And in most cases, while there are no tight rules, the chairperson who has called for a vote and a vote has been recorded will invite the secretary to say, what's the next item? Or simply say, having taken a vote, our next agenda item is this and this. And when the chair introduces by calling out the next agenda item, the chair, or if he or she has arranged with the clerk or the secretary to be the one who will call upon the person to present, will say, our next agenda item, which is children ministries plans for the church. Then the chairperson will say, I would like to call upon Sister Sandra to present this item. The chairperson may even say, if not Sister Sandra herself, may say, members, you already received a backup material on these plans, and I hope you read those backup materials so that as Sister Sandra presents this material, she does not have to read line for line or line by line, but she will just draw our attention to the most relevant portions of this document. Sister Sandra, please go ahead. And Sister Sandra will pick it up. After Sister Sandra has been called upon to present the item, and Sister Sandra presents the item, the material, Sister Sandra will end by saying, Chairman, having presented the material, I move that the board considers approving this item or these plans, whatever the action is called for. I move, Chair, that the presented material be accepted. I move, Chair, that the budget be approved as presented. I move, Chair, the person who has presented, and in all probabilities in a local church board, they are members of the board, they have the right to make the motion to move. You are not allowed to move or to make a motion if you are not a member. There are times when a non-church board member is invited. For example, the finance committee of the board may have asked a certain person who is very good in presenting budgets to present the budget to the church board. And they present the budget, but because they are not members of the local church board, by designation of who is a member, they cannot say, Chair, I move that the board considers the budget. They will have to surrender to the board member who will have to make a motion to say, I move, Chair, that this item be considered. When a motion has been made, a motion must be seconded before the chairperson entertains a discussion. What does that mean? What that means is, when when an item has been presented and a motion has been made, and motions are very specific. I move, Chair, that we purchase a piano for this church. That's a specific motion. It must be seconded. What if it's only the presenter who wants a piano? The rest are not even interested. If they don't second that motion, it simply means they have said there is no need for us to even waste time discussing this because we don't want it. It's the quickest vote. There is no second. Board members, I'm looking around. Sister Sandra has made a motion. Is there a second to the motion? And there is no hand up. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, if there is no second to this motion, then the motion will not be discussed because it fails or it falls. But in most cases, the motion will be seconded, and once the motion has been seconded, it simply means you can then open up for discussions, which can be clarifications, which can be additions, which can be modifying the action, which can be anything. I will not go, and this is not the intention of these presentations to start discussing motions. The main motion, subsidiary motion, other motions. No, it's not the intention. I don't want to be that technical. But discussion will start taking place. If in the discussion you see that the motion must be amended, meaning polished up, then you may entertain a motion to just amend that polishing, to change that word, and then we'll come back to the main motion. I put on the screen Acts chapter 15, just to quote the statement that is recorded when the disciples had a meeting, whatever you may call it, conference or board. The Bible says, after much discussions. Meaning it's okay to discuss an item. Don't regard other people as being bad people because they have decided to talk and want more information on an item. A decision must be made when all information available has been brought to the attention. That's why the Bible says, in the multitude of counsel, there is wisdom. So after much discussion, Chair, you have to bring that action to motion, to a vote. People must take a vote on that particular motion. Much discussion has taken place, therefore there has to be a vote that should be taken. If obviously you are watching this program for purposes of learning, then certainly I would like to pause at this point to allow you to go into your groups to discuss the elements we have shared, starting from presenting agenda items, the rights and responsibilities of members. I want you to spend time reviewing those things and clarifying areas over which you may have questions. Take your time. You will be given 3 or 4 questions to reflect over on these matters regarding what we have presented so far. So I'll give you that time to do so. Okay, having done that, I will then proceed with the presentation. The next section we want to consider is the nature of the item that you are discussing in the church board. This is extremely important for you to understand, because the nature of the item that you are considering in the local church board determines how you actually proceed with what you are doing in the local church board in decision making. So let's look at the nature. There are many decisions in a local church board. I will try to categorize them just into two. Not because these are the only items, but because these are the bigger block categories. The category number one is that of plans or reports. A church board will approve plans from different departments. We already discussed in our first presentations the functions or responsibilities of a board. And there you could remember most of the items have to do with discipling plans, mentoring plans, financial plans, and those fall under plans. When the nature of the item is under plans, it is generally presented by the head of the department, who will come and say, Chair, I move, and then they present and they make a motion. Usually, such kind of items have to have backup material that has already been shared with the people. It's important that people receive backup material on plans, because you don't expect people in 2 hours, when they get the document, then you say, let's read through the documents. No. Board meetings are not times to read through documents. No, they are not, unless it's a brief report on a case. Board moments or times are times to critique, to understand, to approve what has already been read. So generally, agendas that have plans will have the backup material. And generally, the backup material that come up with plans have to have activities that are being proposed as well as costs involved. I have seen many actions taken by a local church board that have borne no fruit. Because when the local church board took the action, they never stipulated how much money is needed and is the money available. It's important that when you approve plans, you say the church will have evangelistic meetings at such and such a place. Then you state the plans, the activities expected, the speakers to be invited, and then you say the cost is so much for the inviting the speaker, for the materials that we will produce, for recording the series, all of that. So that you take an action that is both activities and cost inclusive. And in such kind of motions, you will take questions for clarity. You will say, is there leaders, is there anybody wanting to ask questions on the plans? These are well thought through plans, but there are questions. And then you discuss that. Then obviously you subject it to a vote. Usually votes under plans can be managed by consensus, raising of hands, or by simply majority, all in favor say aye, and they say aye. There is no need to call for secret votes on plans, but the chairperson would determine that. The other set of items presented, which is under the nature of items, is that of discipline. Disciplinary cases are very complex and hard. And I will spend some time now looking at disciplinary cases. Number one, disciplinary cases are generally assigned to the head deacon or the head deaconesses to present them after or when they are ready to be presented to the church board. These are items that should be approached prayerfully and managed with prayer and all, I don't know how to put it, but all, they should be prayerfully done and calling forth for the help of the Holy Spirit. I have put a statement there that you should follow procedures in the church manual when it comes to discipline, because these are cases that can easily become legal if they are not well managed. And all disciplinary cases are recommendations to the church business meeting. Meaning, the church board has no right under the Seventh-day Adventist church governance as articulated in the church manual. The local church board has no right. Their powers are limited to recommending to the church business meeting composed of all baptized members when it comes to disciplinary issues. There are 14 reasons given in the 2015 church manual for which a person may be disciplined. Acquaint yourselves with those. I listed two here. One, denial of faith in the fundamentals of the gospel and in the fundamental beliefs of the church, or teaching doctrines contrary to the same. What that means is if a local church member has denied the faith by saying they no longer believe in the seventh-day Sabbath, they no longer believe in what is stipulated in the fundamental beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that person can be subjected to discipline. Number two, violation of the law of God, such as worship of idols, murder, stealing, profanity, gambling, Sabbath breaking, and willful and habitual falsehood. I simply put there page 63 to 64 for extra reasons for discipline. You can go ahead and check that in the church manual. But now let me talk about the two options that a church board is given when they are dealing with a disciplinary matter. The two options that a church board is given to recommend to the business meeting is, number one, censure. Censure and or removal from membership. These are the two options that the church board has to recommend to the business meeting. The purpose of censure is to express disapproval of a grievous offense that has brought disgrace upon the cause of God, and to impress offending members with the need for a change of life. So the purpose of censure is to simply say we disapprove with what you have done as a church member. And we want you as a church member to know we are not happy. What you have done has brought embarrassment to all of us. And it's not the best way for a person who calls themselves a member of the family of God. And the period for censure is a minimum of 1 month to a maximum of 12 months. The decision is left in the church board depending on the nature of offense or the nature of what is involved. Now there are statements. It's not my intention in this presentation to go into a deep discussion on church discipline, but it is my intention though to make sure that sufficient perimeters are stated So removal from membership only after the instructions given in this chapter has been followed. The chapter referred to is the chapter in the church manual. After counsel from the pastor or the conference when the pastor is unavailable, and after all possible efforts have been made to win and restore them to right paths, should an individual be removed from membership. Now, beloved friends, if you read this statement, you would know removing a person from membership is a serious business. It's a serious business. There are 3 things mentioned here. Number 1, make sure you have followed everything written in the church manual, which includes Matthew chapter 18, and we will come to that. Number 2, before you take it even to the local business meeting for consideration to remove a person from membership, the pastor must be aware. And if the pastor is not aware or present to be aware, then contact the conference. Now, many of your church boards have done that. I hope you do that, because it's serious business to remove. And it says, and all possible efforts have been made to win and restore the person to the right path. Remember, removal from membership is you are no longer a Seventh-day Adventist church member. So most of the actions that should be taken under discipline should actually be censure. Much of what I hear as removal from church membership is actually erroneously judged and done. Because only when all efforts and a person is not willing to change do you do that. Without giving examples, I have no choice. I'm going to give an example. I have seen a girl who gets pregnant out of wedlock. And they are sorry for what they did. They are crying for what they did. They are devastated. And then they are removed from church record. Such a person is not saying they don't love the Lord, they don't love the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they hate the doctrines. No, they are saying, I succumbed to sin, but I'm not a rebel. Such a person must be censured and not removed from church record. Listen to this statement. This statement is so profound, I had to quote it. It's on page 57. No church officer should advise, no committee should recommend, nor should any church vote that the name of a wrongdoer shall be removed from the church books until the instructions given by Christ has been fully followed. When this instruction has been followed, the church has cleared herself before God. What's the instruction given by Jesus? It's the instruction in Matthew chapter 18, which says, if a brother sins, number 1, the person who has become aware of the sin, go to the brother, talk to them, or to the sister, talk to them. If they say, I'm sorry, pray with them, the matter is over right there. If they still persist in sin, take a second person as a witness to go and plead with them to give up their sin and rejoin in behavior, the camp of God's children. If they refuse the counsel of 2 people, that's when it says, and they reject the counsel of the church, then regard them as heathens, non-believers. That's why this action says no church officer should advise, no committee should recommend, nor should any church vote that the name of a wrongdoer shall be removed from the local church books until the instructions given by Jesus have been followed. Closing on an item. You've discussed the plans, you've discussed the church members' discipline, and you are about to close. After discussion on the item, you have to call for a vote. But if there has been a lot of discussions and people are dizzy, it's important that you have the motion read again before the final vote is taken. What's the motion? The motion is just the one statement that was made by Sister Sandra. Chair, I move that the budget be approved. Or read by the head deacon, Chair, in the light of all the efforts made to restore this sister, and in the context that she is willing to keep the faith and is sorry for her acts, for his acts, we recommend, Chair, the motion states that we censure this person for 6 months. And censure, Chair, implies that they cannot hold church office, they cannot participate in this and that. Chair, I move. Or I affirm this. So you have to have the motion read so that when you now ask people to vote, then people know what exactly they are voting on. Then the nature of a matter dictates the nature of the voting. On disciplinary cases, to ask people to say, raise your hands, may not be the best. Because there may be friends, there may be some who are still struggling. Give them maybe a secret ballot. But it must stipulate the time of censure or the nature of discipline. The type of voting, secret or open or consensus, is largely determined by the nature of the matter and by the discretion of the chairperson. And once the item has been voted on, record the resolution. And when you do that, you are ready to close the meeting. And how do you close the meeting? When the agenda is finished, close the meeting, meaning now you've finished the entire agenda. End the meeting in or on time. I will not restate this over because I spent time on it. Please end the meeting in or on time. And if you are going to go beyond 11, then courteously ask the board members for approval to add time. And they will or will not. Then thank the members for coming to the meetings and for the great job. Ask if there are any announcements, and if there are none, invite Sister Casanova to close in prayer. And once prayer has been closed, and once the meeting has been closed with prayer, the meetings are over. Again, I would like you to go in your groups and do a very important group exercise of distinguishing which cases should receive censure and which ones should receive removal from membership. This brings us to the end.